We're back out here once again, and today we're talking about a couple of common misconceptions about bass fishing, and if you subscribe to these, how they're costing you bites and what you should be doing instead. Stick around, we're going to talk all about it. Got him. Ah, don't you get caught up in that. Ah. Come on, you. It has been a topwater frog kind of day. And here is this video's featured comment. Congratulations! If you would like to have a chance to have your comment featured in an upcoming video, all you've got to do is leave a comment. And now, on with the video. Welcome back to Lowbrow Fishing, and let's face it, there is a lot of information out there when it comes to bass fishing and fishing in general. Whether you're old school like me, and grew up watching those old Saturday morning shows, Hank Parker, Bill Dance, Roland Martin, Jimmy Houston, or what have you, or if you're younger and get your information from the internet the modern way, right? Instagram, YouTube videos, blog posts, whatever. That information, when we share it with one another, helps us all become better bass anglers. It helps us catch more fish and better quality fish. So that's a great thing, whether you're sharing a new bait, whether you're sharing seasonal bass patterns, or maybe a new knot to tie your baits on. Whenever we work together in that capacity, we all benefit. However, sometimes there is information, while it seems solid on the surface, when you peel it back, it can be very misleading. And I'm not saying it's on purpose. I'm just saying that it's a myth. It's a misconception that people believe these things. And we're going to look at a couple of those today. And we're going to dive into what's wrong and what's right, what adjustments you can make to make those things better. Especially right now, as that water is hot, as the weather is hot, and fishing is hard. Bites are at a premium. And bad information can make a bad day even worse. So we're going to kind of turn that around. We're going to focus on what should be done and how it can help you when it's out on the water. And first and foremost, we're going to talk about what's the very first thing that you need to be doing whenever you get out to the water. Well, find the bass, right? You're not going to catch bass in empty water. We've talked about that. I've talked about that a lot. But we've also talked about other things that go along with it. Sounds solid, right? Find the bass, there you go, catch fish all day. But the reason I'm talking about this is because, well, on the big lake, I see scopers. I see guys staring at their feet all day, and they're in that same spot. You know, there's a particular spot on the big lake, as an example, right off of a particular point. I go right by it with my little boat every single time I'm out on the water. I know there's fish there. My wife knows that there's fish there. Everybody in the area knows there's fish there. However, you always get one or two guys right there in their fancy bass boats staring at their feet, and they will be there all day. They're looking at that school of bass, and they're fishing a drop shot, or they're fishing a hover rig, or something of that nature, and they're not getting any bites. Yes, what they are seeing are largemouth bass. There's no doubt about it. But those bass are not active. So when you say, find the fish. Yes, you do need to find fish, but you need to find the fish that are active. Find the fish that are biting. So what you need to amend to that statement is find the fish and then cover water. It's what we've always said. If you're seeing bass, if you know they're there, but you're working the water and you're not getting anything, move on, because those bass are not in the mood to play with you. And I don't know about you, but my time on the water is very, very precious. So if I see bass in the area and they're not, they're not biting my lures, and it's even more frustrating when those bass are busting, which is the case right now. We'll get out on the water and you'll see bass busting all around you, and you can get into that trap of chasing those busting bass. Don't do that, because 9 times out of 10 it's going to be very frustrating. And that's a lot what I'm seeing these scopers doing. They're chasing those busting bass around with a live scope, or they're parking in one spot. And there was a guy when I was out on the water yesterday, and he was parked in one spot. He had a very nice Ranger boat. He had all the bells and whistles on it, and he's on the front deck of his boat. And I watched him as I moved around from the northern part. I let the current drift me down to the southern part. I started fishing one thing and then ended up fishing something else. But I let the current blow me along, and I found pockets of active bass. While this guy, he's sitting right there in one spot, staring at his screen for, I don't know, 2 or 3 hours, right in that one spot off of that one point. And there's one point during the day when I was drifting by him. He actually came over to me. He put his trolling motor on. He came over to me and he asked me, he says, "Hey man, are you getting any bites today? What's going on with these fish?" And I said, "Yeah, I'm getting a few bites." I said, "I got a couple of bites on a frog up there, and then I got a couple of crankbait bites." He's telling me that he can't get bit on anything. Honestly, all I saw him throw was a drop shot. That's all I saw him throw all day was a drop shot. So I don't know what else he was throwing, but I could hear him getting aggravated at these fish. He was blaming the fish for not biting his lures. And that's not how you want to be. If the fish don't want to play, well, take your ball, take your toys, and go someplace else. It's just that simple. When you have that methodology, when you have the mentality that you're going to fish other places, because there are other places, all the fish on the lake, all the fish that are in that water are not congregated into that one spot. Move, leave, find fish that are more active, find fish that are willing to play with you, and I guarantee you, you're going to catch more fish. Okay, locate the fish, but you want to make sure you locate the active fish that are willing to bite. What's the second thing? Well, and this is a big thing that we get from a lot of YouTubers that are doing their videos about this bait for May, this bait for September, or whatever. And I try not to get caught up into that myself. I try to give everybody options, but you will get the idea that this one bait is all the fish are biting. When you go out on the water, this is what those fish are going to bite and nothing else. The fish are just not that bougie. They're not going to be locked in on one very specific thing. Now, those bass are definitely chasing bait balls right now. They're chasing minnows, they're chasing shad, they're chasing baby bluegill and baby bass, but that doesn't mean that they won't hit something else if given the opportunity. You guys know I've been talking about, well, this little Bandit 200. This has been my #1 crankbait right now, and it's easy to see why. It mimics what I'm seeing in the water. It mimics those baby shad, those new of the year fry. And this has been doing great work for me. Another bait, whenever I'm wanting to slow things down and be more quiet, obviously is the jerk bait. It's something that's been in the past 3 or 4 videos. It's very similar to that crankbait in the way that it looks, in the size of it, in the color of it. Okay. But even still, I'm still getting bites on something like this, right? This is a Berkeley pit boss or something like a Strike King rage bug or anything of that nature. You know, creature bait is about as far removed from this as you can possibly get. Those bass will bite other things if given the opportunity, if presented in the right way. And it's always great to have a different type of presentation in your back pocket, because this they will get attuned to and you will stop getting bites. It's just the nature of the beast. It's just how fishing works. Even something that's as subtle and as quiet as this, eventually those bass will get turned off to it and they won't bite it anymore. Or they might, but you're not going to get nearly as many bites as you were whenever you first started fishing that particular bait. Which is why I like to have something like this. Something completely different from what I was fishing on the other end of the spectrum. It allows me to use that different approach, right? I'm coming at it from a completely different way. And the reason why I'm using these in a different way on purpose. This, I'm bottom bouncing. I'm dragging this on the bottom. So I want this to stand out. Where this, I'm going through the middle of the water column. So I want it to resemble those prey species the bass are already chasing. This, I just want it to stand out. I want it to look enticing. I want it to look realistic. I want it to look like something those bass are going to get curious about and investigate and hopefully inhale, which I've been able to get a few bites doing that. So it adds versatility to me. It adds an ability to have something else in my back pocket to change up and go to whenever I need to change that bait up, or whenever those bass are getting attuned to what I'm doing. So if I'm getting a couple of bites on a crankbait in an area and that dies off, I will go to Texas rigged worm, a wacky rig, a drop shot, or something, using something like this, black and blue flake stick bait or a creature bait, something completely different. I'll use a jig. And a lot of times those bass are looking down into the vegetation. A lot of guys don't think about that. They think that those bass are looking up, and they are. When you're seeing those bass busting up to the surface, they're coming from down in the depths and busting up on those shad to stun them and then inhale them. But a lot of those bait fish, well, they'll drift down to the bottom, and those bass will look around in the vegetation to pick them off. Or they're just looking through the vegetation for whatever morsels might be there. So that's another place that we want to target. And I'm not doing that with a minnow colored or shad colored crankbait. I'm doing something like this. This works much better. I can work it weightless. I can work it on a Texas rig. I can work it on a Mojo rig. So it gives me that versatility. And I can still keep things compact, right? I don't have to have a million things with me, and I can fish pretty much either side of the spectrum, which gives me the flexibility and gives me the ability to chase after those bass and target those bass from different ways. And that's what's important. Those bass are not going to be locked and laser focused on just one type of presentation. If somebody tells you this is the only bait that they're going to eat, this brand or this color or this type, they're wrong. They are mistaken. You can always get a bass to bite something else. It may be close to what that person is suggesting, which is great. You have different options. If they say brand A, you can go with brand B, and you're still going to get bites. But once that bite burns down, once that bite slows down, well, you can switch to something. And usually I like to go to the complete opposite end of the spectrum, and you can find that that bite will pick right back up. So you can move down the water, pick fish off with this one, switch to another one, pick fish off with that, move down the water, and you can keep that process going. And we call that a pattern. And you can repeat that pattern all day and end up catching a lot more fish than you thought you were going to. So there you have it, dispelling a couple of common myths when it comes to bass fishing. First of all, look for the active fish. Just because you found fish doesn't mean that they're wanting to play. And second of all, bass will always, always, always bite more than one thing. It's in their nature to be curious. So whenever one bait dries up, try throwing something else completely different, and you'll be amazed at how effective that process can be. Thanks for watching Lowbrow Fishing. We'll catch you in the next one.